Sales Rep Radio.
Hi, everybody. This is Dan Walker, and this is Sales Rep Radio, a presentation of timeless sales tips and best practices from some of the world's best professional sales consultants. The money-making news you need starts right here. Let's get rolling.
Hot tips, Sales Rep Radio.
Okay, here's a painfully obvious statement. As sales reps, our job is to sell our product or service. But what remains unclear to some and what needs to be repeated from time to time is it's the way that we sell that makes the difference. Our next guest says a big problem is that sometimes we try to sell a little bit too hard, and that can only put customers off. Busy sales consultant, trainer, and prolific author Jeffrey Gitomer is here to put us back on track. Jeffrey, welcome into Sales Rep Radio.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
You've been around the block a few times, sir.
I've built the block.
You built the block. Now, Jeffrey, one of the problems we see out there in the sales community, especially when sales reps are maybe just not hitting their numbers or they're having a slow month or maybe they're just inexperienced, is that they're selling too hard. And that's a real problem.
Well, if you look at my rule number one, which is people don't like to be sold, but they love to buy, then you at once understand that the salesperson, man or woman, who walks into the potential buyer's office and starts to puke all over them about how great they are and how wonderful their product is and how everybody loves them and look at our quality and here's our value proposition, they're going to lose. Or they're going to fight price because they haven't differentiated themselves in any way. But if you walk into a customer's office and find out what made them purchase before, what their history's been, what their experience has been, and why they think they need it now, and the same salesperson can uncover the profit motive of the customer. In other words, what the desired outcome is, how great their productivity will increase, where their morale will go. Then they have a chance of creating a sort of an electricity inside that meeting. They can engage the probable purchaser or the buyer in a way where there will be a different atmosphere in the room, not a bidding atmosphere, but actually a buying atmosphere.
So we need to be really thoughtful and create just the right atmosphere to make our customer want to be in business with us. And not much going to happen if we don't create that mindset, right?
You know, the salesperson will always tell me how wonderful they are and how great their closing ratio is, quote, when they can get in front of somebody. When, in fact, I think that the customer wants to understand, number one, that there's a difference in the sales representative and the product and the company. And number two, that there's some value in it for him or her as they seek to buy. You know, you don't go to a heart surgeon and get 3 bids, do you? No, you go for the best. You know, the bottom line is a salesperson goes in and tries to explain why he's better than his competition. Does a heart surgeon come in and go, you know, I'm better than that other guy over in Cleveland. He's not really that good. His hands are shaky and they don't really hit the mark. No. It's the reputation that creates that process. And salespeople don't realize that their reputation comes in the doorway before they do. So they're in there trying to create a reputation when, in fact, they already have one.
Well, listen, what if we don't have a reputation when we go in there? Like if we're brand new. Any thoughts on how we manage that one?
Well, I think that that's going to come from customers' past experiences. If a salesperson is brand new and they don't have anybody to use in their own arsenal, then they have to go to their company and look at the company's past history of success with customers and use that. So if the salesperson can't do it specifically, then they have to use the customer base that exists in order to be able to build their own base.
What about the young rep who's out there selling copiers, let's say, and he gets into an office, has limited time, and his first inclination, of course, is just to borrow your term, puke all over them about their great product?
An idiot who's going to walk in and say, I want to talk to the person who's in charge of the office or who's in charge of office machinery, and they're going to get thrown out. But suppose that same guy walks in and sits with the gatekeeper, and he's got 10 pieces of paper in his hand. He lays the 10 pieces of paper out on the gatekeeper's desk and says, 5 are originals, 5 are copies. Pick out the 5 originals, and I'll give you this bottle of perfume. And then the guy says, well, if you can't get which one's the originals, then you have to give me to your boss and let him try to guess the originals. And then you go to the guy's copy machine and say, look, let me take my 5 originals and make 5 copies on your machine and see if you can tell the difference then. Now, All that is a little bit of originality and a little bit of thinking about using their existing machine, using your machine, using their engagement process, and trying to prove to the other person that you're better without having to say it.
Well, that's a good one. Get your creative juices going.
Of course. It's so slick that if a guy came into your office, you would see him.
I would. So you only have a couple of minutes to differentiate yourself, and buyers hate it when you don't. Sounds like your number one job has got to be setting yourself apart.
Well, they're thinking to themselves, why is this guy different when he first walks in the door? Why should you disappoint him and not come up with something? Why would you be so stupid to think your product is going to differentiate you when, in fact, your product is being perceived as the same as everybody else? Do you think there's any difference in copy machines? Really? You know, the people that manufacture them say, oh, yeah, we have a better light or we have a better button, but is there any real difference? And the answer is no. So it has to be from the salesperson. It has to be in the way they use it to produce, or the way they use it to build their image, or the way they increase morale by having less breakdowns, or if they have a breakdown, just give the guy a 20 Kinko's coupons and say, look, if your machine breaks down and our guy doesn't get here, use a coupon. Get out there and make 500 copies.
Another great idea. We need to crank up our creative skills and sell smart, not hard. Okay, Jeffrey, what do you want to leave us with?
Salespeople should concentrate 1/10 on their own product knowledge and 9/10 on how the customer profits from the use of your product. If you can do that, you win. If you can't do that, you don't lose, but you'll be in a price war, and the person who wins the bid in a price war loses everything, including their profit.
Yeah, and that's just not a fun place to be. Jeffrey Gitomer at Gitomer.com. So glad you could stop by. Thanks for helping us out here on Sales Rep Radio.
Pleasure to be here.
That's it for now, folks. Sales Rep Radio is a production of the Marcom Store, the place for strategic sales communications and training, e-learning, video, and corporate podcasts just like this one. This is Dan Walker. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast, and we'll see you again next time for another edition of Sales Rep Radio.